Lucky to Be Here is a podcast that showcases the stories of those who took the leap to build their lives and careers across countries. They share their stories, lessons, and advice to show us what is possible and what it takes to be an international student and professional. Because there is a lot that goes into building this path. We are more than just lucky to be here. In this series of bonus episodes, we reconnect with some of our guests from our first season to explore what has changed in their lives since our initial conversation, what they have learned since, and what insights and topics they want to share more about with us. I am your host, Dr. Analia Gomez Vidal. I know what it takes because I have been there myself. And now I coach and mentor international students and professionals navigating life and career transitions across industries and countries through my company, AGV Services LLC. New episodes of Lucky to Be Here drop every other Wednesday on your feed. So make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening or watching to make sure that you get our new episodes. Join our Patreon to continue the conversation in between episodes and receive my career development reflections and resources at patreon.com/lucky to be here, where subscribers also have access to live chats monthly and behind the scenes updates. Welcome to Lucky to Be Here. I am really glad you are. A quick note before we get started on today's episode. I am very excited for this conversation, and it's full of rich discussions around academia, higher education, and the different perspectives about what it means to pursue graduate school, what to think about it, and the different players involved in it. Because of that, we've decided to split the conversation into two shorter episodes so that we can really make the most for each of those discussions, both from the perspective of faculty and the perspective of graduate students and prospective graduate students. So, this is the first part of our episode. I hope you enjoy it. I am thrilled to welcome back to Lucky to Be Here, Sebastian Vallejo Vera. Sebastian is an assistant professor at the Department of Political Science at the University of Western Ontario. His work focuses on legislative politics, gender, race, and now class. During our episode in season 1, we discussed his experience navigating his academic career from graduate school in the US to tenure track roles in Mexico and Canada, the impact of being exposed to opportunities and resources that facilitated that, including his Fulbright scholarship, and our perspectives on academia as an industry and how to think about our academic work. Welcome back to Lucky to Be Here, Sebastian.
Thank you for having me again.
I am really excited for our conversation because I know that we had plenty to continue talking about after we ended our initial recording, and we have had those conversations in between. So I'm excited to bring you back in this bonus episode and continue that. But first, what has changed since our initial recording and the release of your episode?
Um, I think that unfortunately things have gotten worse
Mhm.
for academia broadly. I'm not in the camp that things are, apocalyptic and that everything is ending and that this is the end of, the university as an institution. I don't think that's true, but I do think that there are important changes that are closing in on us, making it feel as much closer or much closer to home when these things happen, right? So mm, from the latest cutbacks in the United States, I had colleagues, friends who I work with actively who have told me, you know, I do research on gender. I had an NSF grant that explores gender, and they cut that funding from me, so I had to let go all of my postdocs. So I was hiring 4 postdocs and RAs and this, and now I don't have any money, so I cannot pay them, and they have to go. Like things that are like really close to home. About what they can teach, what they can say, what they cannot say, and how many of these news seem, often when we get the news, we get them like, oh, something happened in some, very far away university in a very far away land, and things just start closing in. That mostly in the US, in Canada, we felt the cutbacks in higher education. A lot of the funding that goes to universities comes from the federal government, and there has been, major pushes to um, to reduce the funding, especially to the social sciences. There's a lot of redirecting towards, you know, the newer uh, technologies. We were just talking about this before about AI, and everything has to be AI now. So there's a lot of funding going into that and neglecting some of the more social science or humanities focused programs. I hope that this is not going to be a long term change here in Canada, but at the very least, it has meant that in our case, right, that our incoming cohort of PhD students has almost been halved, and the same has happened with our incoming cohort of master students. We are offering now more unfunded invitations to come, which is complicated because that means that um, I feel that do you really need to pay for a political science master's degree? But apparently there are people who are willing to do it. So I think I guess yay for our program. It's not that we're getting any of that money anyway to reinvest in our own students, but it's that I don't think that things have gotten better. I don't think that things are going to get much better in the near future, but I do hope that in the long term we can rethink and reshape the way that academia is. And in particular, I mean, I talk academia broadly as if I know everything that is happening in academia, but mostly in the social sciences, that we sort of revalue and reinvest both in the field, but also in the students, in the new generations, the younger people that are coming up. But being optimistic in the current state of the world has never paid off, so probably I'm wrong.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that perspective because I think that for a lot of people, they might think that what is happening, what has happened in the U.S. in higher education in academia is very much like U.S. related. When in reality, what we have seen play out is that it really does impact across the globe. And so like your perspective from someone who is working as a professor in Canada also helps understand the many ramifications of the decisions that are being made regardless of where you're at, but like that is very much part of the reality that we live in, whether that is like the academic networks or like the professional networks across the globe. Like there is an impact that is felt throughout.
Yeah, and because academia is so interconnected, like the very nature of modern academia is its interconnectivity and the way that everything is related. But also, let's not forget that, because of many reasons of how it was developed, because of empire, whatever you want to say, most of the academia and most of the money is in the US. So anything that happens in the US is going to affect, it has ripple effects all over the place. Like when we think about the universities in the US are incredible when compared to any other institution in the world, right? So there's a university, there's probably a university in the middle of Tennessee that has 1,000 students and that has like a particle collider, right? And then the best funded university in Canada has a library with 3 floors. I don't know. I mean, I think those are the gaps that we have. But then all attacks on U.S. higher education that we've seen in the last 3 or 5 years or 10 years or as many years as we want to think have eventually are going to have an effect in every other place in the world.
Yeah. And, as you say that, I think that even this very conversation, right, is an example of how powerful that attraction is. Because at the end of the day, like we are both native Spanish speakers from different countries in Latin America who decided to build their lives and careers in North America, starting with the US for grad school and pursued all of our academic training since and build our careers. And we're having a conversation in English right now to also reach more people who are in that process or wanted to go through that process because there is still a gravitational pull towards this. And perhaps that might change over time. But as of now, we are seeing the impacts of, like moves that make this a lot harder, like you're describing. Now, that's how we're starting our update. But I'm also curious to hear, since our discussion and like what has come up, what do you feel are insights or lessons that you really want to make sure that anyone listening to this bonus episode, or anyone going back to our original conversation in season one, who, like, what do you want them to know?
I think that there are some important conversations that we have among faculty members. Uh, we should like we have them on the hall. Sometimes we even have them in meetings, but that they are not being or they're not reaching the people who they're supposed to be reaching. And in part, there's a whole bunch of collective and coordination problems that usually happen in academia because of how long graduate students are and how they're not part of the institution until they're part of the institution and then they leave, whilst professors were there and we see the before, during, and after of their student life, all of those problems. But there is some responsibility on us faculty members when it comes to recruiting and promoting our program to students
Mhm.
that I don't think we're not fulfilling, and we're doing a disservice to the people that we're bringing. Uh, and then there are some things that, again, because of coordination, students do not know, but maybe if they look into the right places and contact the right people, they might be able to have a better experience with going into grad school, which is what I know
Mhm.
most in terms of these discussions. So like, well, the first thing is, what are we promising students? So what are the promises that we're making when we are telling students, come and study with us, come and, you know, um, forfeit 5 years of steady income
Mhm.
and, expand the frontiers of knowledge like that's what are we trying to promise students, and what can we actually deliver, right? So I think that we need to be very upfront with students, not when they are here, not when they've arrived, not in the first week. We need to be upfront before we make the first offer, maybe when they're in doing their master's degree, if they're local students, or when we are trying to recruit students or when students are applying. Like the responsible ethical thing to do, I think, is to like before sending out an invitation, is just getting all the people who might be or are willing to accept an invitation to our school and say, look, these are the conditions that you're coming to, and this is the end game, this is the outcome, and these are the stats, these are the probabilities. We are bringing in students who are going to go into a very competitive market, in a market that is being reduced, which has become less predictable with time, precisely because politics has become less predictable, and not even politics in the world. Yeah, politics in the world has become less predictable, maybe. Particularly politics in the United States have become more predictable. As we just said, that has like a lot of ripple effects. It's the biggest academic market in the world. Like
Mhm.
it's not comparable to anything else in the world in terms of positions, resources, places, institutions, so on and so forth. So what are we telling them and what should we be telling them, right? So and also give them the right tools so that they can maximize their chances of success. And I don't like talking like that, right? Because I am a firm believer that like, a lot of the things that I do them because I love, I like to think of myself as someone who's curious and also motivated by learning new things and trying to show these things to other people, and whatever high thing that you can think about. But like it's easy because I have a job, right?
Mhm.
I also would like to to be how can you be strategic about grad school? What are the things that you should think about when you think about success? And that goes even into like why do you want, like, it's from existential questions like why do you want a PhD, right? So did you want the paper? Do you want the diploma? Yeah, or Amelia?
So when you are describing this, you reminded me of a moment in time that has always stuck with me. And so I appreciate you bringing up these two questions because I see both of them from the perspective of someone that works in kind of like thinking about this at the higher
Right.
level. And so, on one hand, I completely agree with you with the selection process that one goes through. There is a self selection for many of us in like how we get to these experiences or ambitions. We talked about in the original episode about your experience with the Fulbright scholarship, mine, which was slightly different but also similar. Um, and so to your point, what came to my mind is I remember the first week of our boot camp that I always say the reason I signed up for grad school was not because I was bought into an academic career. I didn't even really know what that was like. I wanted to raise the ceiling of the opportunities and type of career that I could have for myself. And so to me, the PhD was always a means to that end without a clear understanding of like what that could lead into. If you asked me 12, 15 years ago if I would be a business owner, I would be like, are you sure? And here I am, right? But in that moment, we were in the first week of the boot camp, and I remember going up the stairs to what was going to be my office as a graduate assistant for 5 years and telling myself, I hope I really like this. And it
Yeah.
was because I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I just thought about it as like, this is one way. Let's figure out if this is my way. And so, like, there is that element that a lot of us come in without really knowing what's possible and what we are getting ourselves into. And there is the other end that you also mentioned, which I think that like right now we are in this opportunity to really be very frank about what's possible and not from the perspective of come like you're coming into an academic training, this is the likelihood of you succeeding in an academic role, but rather from the perspective of like you are coming into an academic training, the academic market currently sucks, most markets currently suck. These are the different ways and paths in which you can leverage your training in potential careers that make sense to you, and you can pick and decide what's next.
Right. Like, I don't want to discourage anyone from going into grad school. Like, I think I would be doing a disservice to humanity, right? I think it's important. Like, I think we need that, right? But I also do not want like people who are like that they feel that they've wasted like
Mhm.
5 years. I mean, if you go into grad school and you feel that you've wasted your time, then it's probably not even going to be 5 years, because the people who finish in 5 years are the highly motivated that really know exactly what they want, and they are have and like the stars have aligned for to them, and were able to reach the outcome, right? Most people, like if you feel that way, you're in your seventh year and you're like, like why did I do this, right? So if like not every um, outcome in life requires a PhD.
Mhm.
So, we must be very frank about it. But then there's this other problem with institutions, is that because we are academics and we were part of that group that made it into academia, I've been hearing for the last, let's see, I left Ecuador 13 years ago. So I've been here for the last 13 years that my skills are transferable to industry. I don't know which skills, and I wouldn't tell. I like if tomorrow you fire me from my current job, I wouldn't be able to tell you where to find another one that is not also academic, like related to academia.
You
So
would
we
have
don't.
to hire me to
I would
help
have to
you with
hire
that.
you. Exactly. So we like as institutions and again as faculty, if we're going to say either, you know come to our school because you're going to be able to enter competitively into the academic job market, but also because like that second part, that our skills are transferable, then we need to have, as much as we have a dedicated faculty member or staff that takes students and helps them get a job in academia, by giving them training and tell them this is how you write a cover letter. This is a friend that I have in another university who has a postdoc coming up, right? Because it's networks at the end of the day.
Mhm.
As I said in the previous episode, uh, unfortunately, meritocracy is a sham, right? And the biggest scam that has neoliberalism has pulled on us. But like it's all about these networks because we have people and it's fine, right? So you have a friend who has a postdoc, who has a position, who has an RA ship, and then you connect these people, and if it works, it's great, and that's how we. Yeah, but we don't have the same thing for industry, right? So I have like when students come to my office and say, hey, I was thinking, maybe I can go into an NGO or like to do research. I'm like, yeah, sure, you should be able to, but I have like literally no idea who you could contact, right? And I'm sure that I am not the. I'm sure that none of us have any idea. So we need to again rethink how not even rethink the training itself. I think the training is fine. I think that we have to rethink the resources that we provide our students.
So I will add a layer to that. And I actually was having a conversation about this as part of a collaboration within APSA, the American Political Science Association, across the committees that we are part of, working on career development and support for grad students. And one of the things that I was sharing in that conversation is the fact that I agree with you. I think that the change is one of culture, and that we are in a time right now where we are forced to face that cultural shift that needs to happen, because it's not from the perspective of, like, you academia or you faculty members are doing things wrong. It's from the perspective of things are no longer what they used to be, and you either pay attention or you pay attention and you adjust, right? And so, to your point, I have encountered and had conversations with so many faculty members who want to support their students and mentees and their departments, but they don't know even where to start because they never had the experience themselves or know the resources. And the reality is, like, there is a whole lot of workload that also goes into your plates when you go into the tenure track that most grad student programs don't necessarily train you for to deal with. And so then you find yourself with a lot of competing needs to tend to, and career development becomes like a very big and complicated one. So for a lot of people, it's either I want to be helpful but I don't know how, or I don't know about this, let me just like not say anything about it and let people figure it out on their own. And at the end of the day, it's a lose-lose situation. And so I think what the moment requires for us is to really engage in a lot of the conversations that I personally, and I know that us collectively, have been engaging in for the past few years now, of really changing the culture to understand that academia as a training can serve in many ways, and that the academic training and the career development process go hand in hand, where there is no academic training is the default, and so like you're going to go to academia, and if academia didn't work then you go into industry, but rather you are being trained academically in this way. These are the different ways in which this can work, and so then you get to explore in different environments and industries to decide what's the best course of action for you. But that is not what happened when it's to this day is not what happened. Like, it didn't happen with us necessarily. We had like really good advisors who were very open to that. And so like we did get additional support and discussions around this when we were in that process. But to this day, it happens that I find myself mentoring and coaching graduate students and recent graduates who feel unsettled or scared about even having this type of conversations with their advisors because they fear the repercussions for those relationships and like what's possible for them. Because like you said, it's less about meritocracy and it's a lot more about the networks that support you and show you what is possible.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but I guess because I was just thinking of myself as like uh, a faculty member who is actively thinking about these things and wants to provide the best outcome for my students. But I can definitely see how many faculty members would actually find that almost like an offense, like right from a student coming up to them and saying, "Hey, I've heard that my skills are transferable. Where am I? Where are they transferable to? Do you have any idea?" And that just like shutting off sort of like this relationship that you might be building with at the end of the day somebody who has power over you and
Mm-hmm.
who has like the keys to your future. It's complicated, but yeah, and yeah, because at the beginning I was going to tell you, I think that you're letting faculty members off the hook a little bit too easily. I mean, it's on us. I mean, because it's not that when we talk about institutions, for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's not, like the institutions are not self-governing. It's not somebody has, and institutions are made up mostly by, academic institutions are made up not primarily, but substantively by professors and academics.
Mm-hmm.
And even the ones who go up the bureaucratic chain come from our professors and academics. And maybe that's one of the problems because we are not taught how to administer this type of institutions. But my chair is an academic, and then the dean is an academic, and then the provost and the president. I mean, they're all academics. So they do come from these conversations. And
Mm-hmm.
somewhere along the way, um, they get lost, or maybe it's not that they get lost; it's that these are the type of uh, uh, profiles that
Mm-hmm.
the university, the institution
Uh,
prefers.
I'll, I'll add a layer to that, which is I I see where you're coming from with that, and the reason why I extend more grace to faculty in some cases, not always, right? Like the reason why is because, to your point, even though you come from academia and you may or may not still be a scholar, every step upwards in the administration chain changes your perspective and your incentives in ways that you may no longer be grounded in the same principles and the perspective of being a faculty member. And I say this, having collaborated and worked in academia at like leadership roles now, or having more of a strategic perspective of what this looks like. And so while I agree with you that faculty play an important role, and I actually went as far as like hosting brown bags with faculty to really have this discussion with them, um, I also believe that our perspectives change when we shift our positionality within the institutions. And so, for example, like I'll give you a more personal example of that. My perspective on career development and research as a researcher changes very much when I'm thinking from a business development perspective, or when I'm thinking about the ecosystem of a campus and the different players in it. So I do agree with you that faculty have a role to play, and that's a work that I do with the kind of like career ecosystem strengthening program and frameworks. But faculty are one part of the process. And so this is the conversation in which I think that for us to really reach a level of cultural shift that we need, we also need other parts of the academic field to play an active role, whether that is, like leadership at the higher level, whether that is the professional organizations that we are a part of that also play a role in signaling what is accepted and encouraged and what is not. And in the day to day, right? I was sharing with someone in a conversation how we can give all the resources that we have on career development. We can host a million workshops and webinars about transferable skills and different ways of, moving from industries to others and all that stuff. But if you're a graduate student whose advisor or chairs, says explicitly that it's a waste of your potential if you go elsewhere, instead of staying in academia, the conditioning that you are receiving and the environment that you're interacting with is already putting a certain hierarchy into what's expected of you and what's desired of you. And like you said, the power imbalance that exists in these relationships, which is often not called out the way we should do it, really plays a role in allowing us to imagine what is possible for ourselves, even within this environment.
No, yeah, I agree. And to add like another layer of it, that there's also like this whole sort of dimension of the incentives that grad students might have going into a grad program that is actively or being very active in terms of, okay, so this is the academic sort of route and this is the industry route. Then but that's just like a small thing, because if we think about that the training is exactly the same and these are just options, then you don't create, uh, competing interests. You just create, the same interest, which is I want to graduate with the best possible training because then I can, you know, present myself into this wide array of options. But I will push back once more. I do think it's on the faculty because we have all the power. I mean, not all the power. We have a lot of power. We're just lazy. I mean, and I'm speaking for myself as well. I'm speaking for some of like my colleagues, not all of them. I mean, we're lazy in the sense that we get complacent because in not in all cases, there's a lot of faculty that are in very precarious conditions, and this is not about them, right? So this is about tenure track and tenure people who have a job for life guaranteed, that once that we have a capacity to organize and collectively demand these things because we are providing all the labor that these institutions require to make the money that they make. Mm-hmm. Whether they want to accept it or not, the moment that we stop teaching, they stop earning money. So we need to use this like this leverage, like these levers that we have, these pressure mechanisms to, I know that like, I just don't think that it's like uh, enough that my dean has a different perspective than I have. Like, make it work at the end of the day. Like, it's that's my point. Like, because if we don't push back on this, like, I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be fine. Like, I'll retire when I'm 95 because my job allows me to do that. I'll go to my office once a week for 2 hours and continue receiving a salary and live a happy life. But that's not all, right? So we have to think collectively and in community, and we have to think that I also want that for my students. Like I also want that for like because also not seeing them only as students, because that creates like a hierarchy. Like I want that for my fellow human being. Like I want this person uh, that deserves a good life just as much as I deserve a good life. Mm-hmm. But that requires, yeah, that like, and I understand, I'm saying that lazy might be like maybe a strong word, but complacent. I do think we get a bit complacent, and I think that we get complacent and we complain a lot about. And again, there are faculty members who have more, like labor that they carry out. But we also have the capacity, like at certain point in our careers, and that's the beautiful thing about academia, that we have the capacity at certain point in our careers to just say, I don't want to do it. And then you don't do it. And there's not a power on earth that can make you do those things, because that's the whole point, right? That's the whole point of having tenure, that you are free to carry out and advance, right? The knowledge and curiosity, but also to lift other people up with you. Because if 20 years from now, this is only going to be a whole bunch of 60 years old carrying on the same research from the same institutions over and over again, it's going to be very boring, and it's going to be not ideal, right? So that's all I'm saying. And I am putting all the sort of pressure on myself, because I should be carrying this out, and that's one of the things that I want to do, right? So I want to sort of carry these things forward, even if it's just only me saying these things. Like, somebody has to start. Like an excuse cannot be, oh, but only I care about these things.
Mhm. Yeah. And, one of the things that I have shared a lot about my experience in academia, first as a graduate student and then moving along, has been that I've always felt very fortunate about having been exposed to the 360 of academia, meaning that I wasn't just as a grad student, like learning how to become a researcher, but I really was able to learn how to be a player of the entire field. So
Mm.
I was able to like learn and become an academic, but also learn how to be a staff member, how to like manage research, how to think about it in a leadership perspective over time, and so on and so forth. And when I hear you say this, one of the things that comes to mind, and I think like this is a full circle from how we started the conversation, is that we, in whatever position you play in this game, to a certain extent, what we are currently going through is also an opportunity for us to really rethink how we are approaching it and how we can do better for not just for ourselves but also for our community as a whole. And and I'm curious to hear, to what extent do you agree with that, but also to what extent do you feel that one of the determining aspects of who is going to be willing to play in this is how much each colleague of us is thinking about pursuing their own research as the ultimate goal versus growing the field and the production of knowledge as the bigger goal.
I mean, so the first part, I agree. Like, I'm completely on board on that. Um, on the second sort of question, that is, I don't think that one excludes the other.
Mhm.
I think that you can do both. I'm also fine with division of labor, right? Now, like, I what we need is, willing participant. Not everybody has to be a willing participant of, you know, making the actual sort of changes and pushing for the institutional requirements, or changes in the language or whatever we need in order to be able to provide these services, like providing the actual services to the students in that, or training, or preparation. Like, the cultural switch has to come from everybody. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, like, you have to be on board,
Mhm.
and being on board doesn't mean to begrudgingly accept as well. There needs to be sort of like an active, at the very least, intention to say, okay, yes, I understand that this is not the same field or the same academia that I knew 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, or whatever, when I graduated. It's different. And the ultimate goal here is to make this place a better, or provide better conditions for, the field in general, my community, our students. And we would be doing a disservice if I don't change this perspective. So again, you can still focus on research and be just like those horses that have those things. There's probably a name for those blinders, right?
Yeah.
To research, and that's perfect, right? So that's great. No, nobody is saying that you cannot do that. But while you do that, and you have research assistants, and you have students in your classroom, you have to be open to say, "Hey, I do research, but there's other ways to do this, and I am going to support you." Whatever you need to do, because again, we have people who are doing those other things, right? We have this division of labor, which includes professionalization and career development. And I have my contacts in academia, and I can help you if you think that's your route. But if you think that your route is not that one, or it just so happens that that the contacts that I have, or the way that I can help you is not going to land you the job that you would have liked in academia, I am not going to hold it against you and be an active barrier to you being able to have a livelihood, right? I, I think sometimes academics take themselves too seriously and do not understand that while the research, I am sure, that is changing the lives and minds of our political institutions, they are not as important as the livelihood and well-being of our colleagues and our students.
100% agree. That is the end of today's episode. Thank you for listening to Lucky to Be Here. I am your host, Dr. Analia Gomez Vidal. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening and leave us your review. Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/lucky to be here to continue our conversation and to get my reflections and resources for career development too. See you next time.